All right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to give folks a few minutes to just meander in here, take a look at what's going on, make sure our streams are all working and up to date here. It looks like we're good. All right. I love all of that. All right. Anybody in the chat? Just drop in where you're listening from. I'd love to see what everybody's up to, what you're interested in today, what brought you here. And all right. So, welcome in. Last stream of the year here, last event of the year here for the MCP Server Builder community. And if you're like, what is that? I found this event. I've never been to an MCP Server Builder Series event. Go ahead and scan this QR code here to follow along with our calendar. You'll find out about events like this. And we also host in-person meetups in San Francisco, New York, and other pop-ups around the world. And we'd love to have you. This is the best way to stay up to date with what we're doing here, and so that you won't ever miss a cool event like this. So let's get to the main event here. So I'm really excited. I am joined here today by one of my favorite people here at Apollo, Senior Software Engineer Andrew McGivery, to round out the end of our year here and introduce something really new for you so that you will have no peace over your break because you will be excited to build. We're going to talk today about apps for LLMs, ChatGPT apps specifically, and kind of see what the team here has been up to, what Andrew's been hacking away on, and see a demo of some work and show you how you can get your hands on it and provide some feedback or tinker around. Andrew, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Let folks here know who you are and what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, folks. My name is Andrew McGivery. As Amanda mentioned, I'm a software engineer here at Apollo. I am up in, well, it's not too gray today, but I'm up here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We're in the gray season right now. So normally it's great. It actually looks very beautiful outside. If anyone's familiar with Seattle weather, very similar weather situation here around this time of year, but it looks like we're being blessed with, I can see the color blue. So it's going to be a good day.
All right. So I'm really happy to have you here. I think this is the first time you've ever been on a stream with me, ever done any kind of event with me. So I'm super excited about that, except for, of course, for GraphQL Summit, if anybody was at that earlier this year. So let's kind of start with the basics, because I know that I know a little bit about these apps, and I feel like it's probably a mixture in the audience as well. Some people who are already building and some folks who just have no idea what's going on and want to learn more. So can you walk us through like the basics? What even are apps and LLMs? What does that even mean? And like, why would I want to build something like this?
Absolutely. In early October, OpenAI introduced this this apps SDK thing with a handful of launch partners. And these apps can be invoked via ChatGPT, via this MCP interface, and they're embedded directly into ChatGPT. And in this intro video, I'm kind of showing a version of their intro video from their blog post. They showed use cases like asking for flights, hotel locations, house listings. They did some stuff with Canva, I believe. And they teased this idea of asking follow-up questions to ChatGPT. But, looking at this post, it left a lot of room for interpretation of what these apps actually are and how to think about them. And, to your point, Amanda, why would I want one of these things?
Yeah.
And, if you took it all at face value, and I think a lot of people do, I'm talking to folks, I think a lot of people are taking it very literally. You might look at this and the conclusion you may come to is, oh, this is an app in an iframe. But I don't know about you, that's not really a compelling idea to just say, oh, I've got an app in an iframe. So I don't think that's very interesting. And I don't think that's really the way we should be thinking about this. Instead, the way that I think we should all be thinking about this is more of this idea of you're able to have this conversation with the ChatGPT, with an LLM, and your app becomes part of that conversation and allows your user to follow up with additional requests, additional questions, and your app just becomes responsive to that natural flow of the conversation.
So your app's evolving along the way, with...
Yeah,
as part of your conversation with the LLM. It's not like just this static thing that's sitting there.
Yeah. It's not just like, hey, can you bring up the app and then you just like are using it. Like
Yeah,
that's not
like
it's
a
not super
website embed.
exciting.
It's not like
Yeah, right. It's not an exciting idea. And I think, the way to think about these is that these are very action oriented apps. So these are apps where you are enabling the LLM to take action on behalf of the user, very similar to MCP, but you are giving a visual also aspect to this back and forth set of actions that you're taking with the LLM. And I like to sort of think about a very futuristic point of view. For anyone who is Marvel fans or has really watched any of the Iron Man movies or anything like that, like there's that. You can think of this like future where you've got whatever your crazy AI device is, and you're talking to it, asking it to do stuff, asking it questions, and it's showing you these sort of dynamic visuals based on what you're asking it. Or if you want maybe something less science fiction, perhaps maybe more like the Meta Ray-Bans or something like that, where you can talk to your glasses and you've got these visuals coming up. Like I think like if you were to follow the natural extension of where does this eventually end up, that's where we end up.
yeah. I mean, I think we all want the science fiction level assistant. Like we're all waiting for it, right?
Yeah, but obviously today we're not in Iron Man world. We're in chatting via text world. I don't think we're that far away. ChatGPT does have a really, really good voice mode, but it's not quite enabled to do these apps yet. But boy, when it is, I'm going to be excited to play around with that.
Awesome. All right.
And like we're not quite there yet. We're not quite in that future. But I think it's worth. So for some context setting here, Amanda, I think it's worth discussing how to think about where we are and kind of ground ourselves. And I think the best way to do that is to compare it to mobile apps. So it's something I think everyone's familiar with. Unless people on the chat are very, very young, I think a lot of people will remember when mobile apps landed on the scene way back in the day on the iPhone. This was a very fun time because nobody knew what the heck these things were.
Yeah, everybody was really skeptical. Like, what are you gonna do with an app? And now, like, everything's an app, and I get annoyed at the number of things that I have to download.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy now because you think about now, like we live our lives around these apps, and they're ubiquitous. It's like it'd be crazy if you met someone that didn't app was. I mean, obviously, more so in countries that have smartphones and stuff like that, but it's pretty universal. But at the time, people were kind of like, are these widgets? Like we really had no idea, what we were looking at, how much it would change and shape our future. It's really, really funky looking back at, how this was received at first. And then we got app stores, and companies perked up a little bit. In that they were like, okay, this is interesting, but I think it was still pretty niche to have your own app at this point. And people weren't quite sold. Like the idea of making money on one of these things was still pretty crazy. And like if you could go back in time and tell businesses back then that you could build a whole business model off of an app, like try to explain like TikTok to them, like I think they'd be like, you're crazy. Like it just didn't, like no one really got yet where this was going. But as with all things, we have a lot of hackers out there, a lot of folks that like to try out things, get enthusiastic about technology. So we saw this sort of organic growth from these, we'll say, independent creators. But a lot of these apps were not very good. If a lot of folks maybe remember back when we had like flashlight apps and fake lighters, and I think there was one that was like a beer can and like you tipped it back and it showed the beer slowly emptying or something like that. Like these were not really good, serious applications. They were kind of junk, frankly. And so at this point, a lot of companies were thinking and saying like, why would I ever make one of these when I have a website? But something happened at some point. We saw that there was this industry mindshare. Enough people were doing it that companies started going, oh, wait a minute, my competitors are doing well. If they have an app, I need an app. And then suddenly you just saw this, and the rest is history. Like we know what happened from there. We're in the world that we are now, where apps are just a thing.
So we're like even pre-App Store at this point, because I don't know if anybody in the chat has looked into this yet, but this is really for the OpenAI SDK, the Apps SDK that you're about to see a little more about. It's like they haven't released the ability to have like to submit to an app store yet. You have to like closely partner with them, and they're slowly rolling out some apps. It's so we're really, really early then. Is that right?
We are so early. Like if you look at this timeline here, you are right here. We are so early on. Like, before it was apps now on your phone, and we're at apps now in your chat.
Yeah. Like figuring out.
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was if you have something else to talk about, I was going to say, now I'm like excited, like take me through, like I want to know, like, so what's the building experience right now? Because something generally, like when something's really early, it's a little rough. I'm just curious, because I know you've been diving into this apps SDK. What's the dev experience like here?
Yeah. There's actually quite a bit. And it can be a little bit overwhelming. So, if we dig into the OpenAI documentation and the examples, so I have to create an MCP server, which exposes tools, which returns some of these underscore meta fields, some meta information. And then we can also return data via structured content. And I have to set up a resource that returns HTML, and I can do follow-up tool. Like there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. And like I assume
there's a lot going on.
Is it so it's built on top of MCP, but there's a lot of different configurations that you need to make this work. And then this is specifically for ChatGPT. So I assume it only works with that client too right now.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. This only works with ChatGPT. And you can, I mean, we already know that, and I think we'll touch on this later, but we already know that, there's the MCP app official specification that is, sort of a sister specification of this. And, I would be shocked if there wasn't also other vendors that were coming up with their own version of this as well that are not going to follow the spec.
Also, another thing that commonly happens early in the evolution of anything. Okay, so this is cumbersome to me, at least. What is there when you started working on this and kind of looking into like what different tooling we have here at Apollo and how we can support? Was there any place for like to make this a little, I don't know, is there a way to make this a little cleaner? Was there any like that you were able to solve to make it nicer to use, or did you have to just take this and kind of slap it with the MCP server, the Apollo MCP server?
Well, when we first started this, like we had our customers sort of asked us, like, all right, you've got this Apollo MCP server. Can I add underscore meta and can I add resources? And that's sort of maybe an obvious place to start, is just add basic support for, OpenAI calls it an app SDK. From here and then I want to refer to it more as a sub protocol, because I think that's more of an honest expression of what we're really looking at here. It's not like you go in and npm install apps SDK. You go to the documentation and you say, all right, what do I need to do to start building one of these things? And you have to literally go through and be like, what are all the things that I have to make a server return? What are the APIs that my HTML needs to be able to call out to? So, when we looked at this entire experience,
I was I just want to build the app. Like I want to make my
right.
I don't want to do all this.
I think it's important to call out to and recognize who are probably building these apps. Probably a front-end team who is been building, web applications. And I think like if you've got full stack teams, then maybe this is palpable. But, in a lot of companies, your front-end product teams and the teams that are managing infrastructure like this, and maybe a platform team or some kind of backend team, or these days, we've got emerging team types like AI platform teams. This idea of, either having to pick between my front-end teams now having to learn about these MCP servers, how to stand one up and maintain it, or having this new reliance on my platform team to maintain all these tools and stuff like that. It's just not palpable, and it's a great way to kill your velocity. And so when we started looking at this and we said, what is the developer experience that in our heads would be the most ideal? The first thing I said is, well, I don't want folks to think about any of this. I don't want folks to be thinking about the inner workings of this protocol. I don't even really want them to be thinking that hard about tools or resources. And I definitely do not want them thinking about underscore meta. And honestly, like they don't even really need to be thinking about MCP that much. And again, those cross-team dependencies, I don't want to add another thing that our already overarched platform teams have to worry about. Like I don't want them to be like, all right, here's another thing I have to try to service. And for my front-end folks out there, I don't want you to have to be waiting because you have this dependency on another team. What I do want folks really focused on, and I think this is the really important piece that sometimes we miss as technology folks, is I want folks focused on building really exciting and compelling experiences for your customers. That's what matters, right?
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So, all right, you've teed me up here. Like, show me something cool.
Okay. All right. Perfect. One last note, and then I'll jump to the demo.
Oh, sorry.
Here.
I'm getting ahead of you. Now I want to.
No. Yeah, I promise I'll show you in like 10 more seconds. The last thing I just want to say here is the biggest problem I have with what I've put the X over on the screen here is that if you've tried to do this, it probably feels like you're learning 100% from scratch how to build apps. And we said we already know how to build apps. And so what I want this to be is 90% reusing what you already know about building apps and 10% learning about the specifics of this new paradigm. That's what we'd like to get it to. So without further ado, because Amanda, I can feel that you're on the edge of your seat, and I hope people
are very much on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, let's take a look here. So I've got ChatGPT open here. I've created an application very originally called Apollo. This is an e-commerce app that I've created. So let's go ahead and just ask it. Let's go shopping. This is going to result in a tool call. I've already registered our application ahead of time with OpenAI. And we'll see here that I get this rendered right within ChatGPT. And this is a normal React app. I think that's the first thing maybe to call out here is that this is a React app. Like I can interact with it. I can click on stuff. I can search. I can fully interact with this. This isn't just like a fixed, visual or something like that. But for the demo, and we're going to pretend that my left click button doesn't work so well right now. So I'm going to be just chatting with this application instead. And perhaps maybe that Rolex, well, that's looking kind of cool. Let's take a look at that. So we're going to say, show me more info about the watch. And in typical LLM fashion, I can be sort of vague with my request. I could have said
tool. So you even you can see that it's called it's using MCP, like it's calling an MCP tool.
Yeah. So if we want to see more details, like we could expand this and kind of see those tools that it's calling, and we can even see kind of the raw response. Typical users probably going to be looking at this. I'm not sure what this is going to look like. I'm in developer mode, and I'm not sure what this is going to look like non-developer mode. Like they might hide a lot of the stuff from the user, but
I would assume so. Yeah, once you're in production, your users don't want to see all that. But it's interesting to me. Like I was like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I did my first tool call and it showed me this view, and then I sent tell me more about the watch. And because it was able to see the data that came back to this view, when I said, show me the watch, it knew that I was probably talking about the only watch that came back in that data set. In which case, then it goes, all right, I know how to show the product details for a specific product because I've got another MCP tool for that. And now it can show me this view. And so, I like that. Let's go ahead and add that to our cart. And this is an example we're going to see of, the other things that we were seeing were sort of these read-only actions. And in MCP, there's this idea of an action being, sort of doing update or it's mutative in some way. And so it, right now, ChatGPT pops up this, to the user, the app's trying to do this thing. Would you like to do this? Yeah, sure. Let's add it to our cart. And we get this thing in our cart. And we'll go ahead and please remove it from our cart. A little more expensive than I planned on spending on a watch. But that being said, pretty cheap for a Rolex, though. $9,000 is not that bad for a Rolex.
Sure. Oh, okay. Well, then I guess we're all getting one. Thanks.
Yeah, we're all getting Rolexes. I'm going to be like, you get a Rolex and you get a Rolex. And, there's a bunch of stuff I could show you here, but one thing I do want to show you here, if I go back to top products, there was one more thing I want to show you here, which I think is really interesting. So keeping in mind that apps like ChatGPT, they've got a whole history of chat with you. And so they kind of know some stuff about you. And one of the things that the OpenAI SDK has given the ability to do is to send messages from your app back up into the chat. And so I have this Inspire Me button here. And when I click on that, you'll see here a message gets sent down here. And it says, well, I know you're a software engineer. And so it's kind of giving me some suggestions from the products that it's seen kind of coming through on those tool calls.
Yeah.
And what it knows about me. It's able to get some suggestions here.
I have a question from the chat, Andrew. I think you're going to get into probably in a moment, but we want to know here if the product details are predefined and structured, created on the fly. And so I think you'll be getting into that when we get into the code here, is my guess.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. And, I will tease a little bit by saying, however you would do this with React is how you would do this here. Because at the end of the day, like what you're seeing in this iframe is a React application. And what you'll see shortly when we jump into the code is that if you've built with sort of a standard React stack before, if you've used like, in our case, we're doing GraphQL based, so we've got Apollo client in there. If you used Apollo client, if you use stuff like React router for routing, a lot of this is going to look very familiar. So we'll come back to that in a second, and then hopefully we'll answer the question. Amanda, please hold me accountable for answering that.
Of course, yeah, we will definitely get to the question. I wonder do we have a lot of React developers in the chat? I feel like there's a lot of React developers everywhere, always. All right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll come back to that. Okay, so last thing I'll show. So we got this message, we got this kind of show we can kind of communicate back and forth, and just to kind of wrap the list up with a little bow on it, I'm just going to say awesome, add the laptop to our.
All right.
And we'll do that final tool call. And we'll put that in our cart.
Folks are itching for the implementation. You've got us all excited. So we're also going to know how that interface was designed. Is it part of the client? This is all coming really soon, I'm sure, because I'm itching about it too. Oh, we got our React developers checking in as well.
Perfect. All right. Shall we jump over to some code? I think that's probably what people are itching to see. Yeah, Amanda's going to riot if I don't show the code soon. She's going to show up with a pitchfork and a torch. Okay, so what I've got a React application that's built using Vite. So if anyone's done single-page applications before in React, you've probably used Vite, or at least part of it. For those of us who've been around for a while, it's sort of one of the natural successors to Create React App from back in the day. So if you've used that, Vite is very familiar as well. So if I look here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. I've got a pretty normal looking React application. I'm using this use query Apollo client. If you've used Apollo client before, this is going to look very, very familiar. And I've got a pretty otherwise, normal looking React app. And this top products here is the actual query that I'm passing in to use query. And so you'll see here I've got this GraphQL option with this GQL tag that gives me that syntax highlighting and other things. So if I ignore that there's something obvious on the screen here that is different, most of this looks pretty familiar if you've written a React app with Apollo client before. You've got an operation defined, and you're passing that operation into use query, and you would expect that that's going to grab some data and attempt to grab it from the cache if it's available. But I'm going to call up the elephant in the room here. We've got a directive here called @tool. This is that 10% that starts to sneak in here, that 10% of the new paradigm. So remember earlier I said that I don't want folks to have a new dependency on the platform team, and I don't want the platform teams to have to babysit the front ends. We don't want that relationship to have to exist, or that dependency. We want to have a relationship, not a dependency, though. And so this tool here is allowing you to declare that tool right in line with the operation that you want to be executed when that tool is executed.
Okay, that's kind of cool. So your this isn't predefined like as part of your MCP server development. Like
Yeah,
this is defined
exactly.
here in the client. Like it's just fully client side, fully front end
Yeah.
focused.
Yeah, exactly. So I am
Interesting.
declaring the tools that this application needs in order to be able to run. So if you think back to our demo, the first thing I did is I said, Apollo, let's go shopping. Maybe I can scroll all the way back top here. I said, Apollo, let's go shopping. And you'll see here I got my top products page. And so the tool call here that happens is this top products tool. And so that's exactly declared here, is that I've got a tool called Top Products. I've given a description. And because I'm attaching it to this GraphQL query, this Top Products GraphQL query, they get this association. And so when this tool is executed by ChatGPT, this GraphQL operation is also executed at the same time. And so what's returned back from the MCP tool response is both my resource, the actual HTML that needs to render my React app, and the data that it has been fetched as a result of that tool being called.
Awesome. So let's take a beat then, and because I think this starts to get into some of those questions. So these product details, this is all defined, and like the different product types, all that data, all of this is predefined. This is part of your whatever your data design is going to be for this. What should return, all of that.
Yes.
And then
yes.
the interface is part of that client design too.
Correct. Yeah. So, if we look at product design specifically, since that was sort of the question that came up earlier, you'll see here that I have a probably very predictable, get product query that, I have in a use query down here to grab that data based on an ID. And I also have an add to cart, a mutation that also, we've marked up with a tool and said, hey, again, this is a tool. This is an action that ChatGPT can take on behalf of the user.
Okay. Now, while you're in here, and maybe this is probably in a different part of the code base, but I had a couple other questions come through. Somebody was curious about how the search box works. So I don't know if you're able to show that at all, or if it's anything special. And then also, if you've addressed, you may have addressed this already, if it only works with React. I'm reading and listening to you at the same time. If this is only working with React, or can it work with other frameworks?
Yeah, I'll answer the search one quickly. So it's not that sophisticated. If I go to the search bar component, it is a pretty typical just React component. They can type in it, and then when they hit enter, it's just going to send them over to the search page. And if I go over to that search page, it's just another. We've got another operation here called search query. And again, we've also actually attached a tool to it. So I didn't show that in my demo, but I could ask ChatGPT like, hey, search for phones or something like that. And because I've exposed this as a tool, then it's able to then execute also this search query for a particular query.
So that also sort of answers this question too. Like, you're writing the client application that becomes embedded.
100%, yeah. And I think the important aha here is that yes, you're writing a client application that's embedded in ChatGPT, but the mental model is thinking about this in terms of what are the actions that I want the LLM to be able to take on behalf of the user. What is the conversation that a user would like to be able to have with my application? And so it's a slightly different mental model than normally building an app where you just go like, your thought process is more like, what's a good navigation, what's a good information architecture. You kind of take out that thought process that you would normally do with like a web app or a website, and you replace it. Your information architecture becomes what is the conversation and what are the actions.
That's That's awesome. I have another question. So, and I think maybe this is a good point to say, explain the relationship between the Apollo MCP server and then the tool you created using like top
Yeah.
products as an example, since we've been talking about that.
Yeah, so let's follow this through for a second. So
Okay.
I've got this declaration here that I've done where I've said I have this operation called top products, and I'd like to make a tool from this operation called top products. So the way that this works is I've got I mentioned earlier that we're using Vite for this. I've got a thing here called this application manifest plugin. And this is really where a lot of the magic is happening, and it's sort of happening behind the scenes without you having to know or care about it. So what this application manifest plugin does is it automatically, as during build and dev time, goes through your application and extracts out all of those operations and those tool declarations as well. And the result of what that is that it generates this application manifest.json file. And I want to emphasize before I go into this is not something you write by hand. This is completely generated. And this becomes effectively a manifest that declares your application. And so what we've got in here is we've got a list of all the operations, as well as the tool or tools associated with that operation. And so this is one of sort of our artifacts. So when I start up Apollo MCP server, it will look at this manifest file, and it will, on the fly, generate the resource and all of the tools required to serve your application based on this manifest. So to answer the question directly, no, you don't have to create these tools ahead of time in MCP server. The entire setup from an MCP server perspective is you turn it on.
So you basically have your schema. You have the
Yes.
MCP server is that layer over the schema that allows this functionality to be available to then define the tools from the front end in this case.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, and so the beauty here is, again, remember I know I'm kind of broken recording here a little bit, but what I want is that my front end developers are really focused on just building that really awesome app, and so they don't need to muck around with the MCP server once it's stood up. Once it's stood up, they can freely declare whatever tools that they need to declare, and the MCP server will automatically generate those MCP tools and resources required to serve that application.
Awesome. It looks like you got us to a good answer here. Appreciate that extra detail. I have one question for you before you move on to some more details, and I'm not sure. I'm not personally sure the answer of this. So this is someone interested in the security layer case when a user needs to be identified. So Apollo MCP server does support all kinds of whatever the most current auth strategies are for the MCP specification, but how does that extend into this apps SDK world? Does OpenAI have a particular way that you need to handle that, or is it based on the MCP server?
Yeah, so OpenAI has, this is sort of an interesting one. Somewhat famously, MCP has OAuth, but most people don't actually implement the OAuth on like a lot of the MCP servers out there just use headers because it's kind of a mess. And so OpenAI has a way where you can do an OAuth type exchange for these applications, and basically requires your app to effectively return a very typical auth challenge when it tries to call it for the first time, and the user's not authenticated. So they do have an auth flow. We don't have that built in right now. It's interesting. A lot of the folks that we've talked to so far are, and I think, again, goes back to our thing about this being very early days. There's a lot of nervousness right now about actually having non-public data be available in these apps. And I think that's going to change. Like, we'll get there. But a lot of folks are like, I don't want to pick on any particular company, but if I'm a flight company, as an example, I can look at flights and get a lot of the flight information without actually being logged in. And I think that's what a lot of what we're seeing. Like, if you look at some of the apps that are already on ChatGPT, like, a lot of them are not authenticated now. So there is a way to do it. And the security is like, there is an auth layer, and ChatGPT sort of facilitates that. and it's on our list to support. But we also, from some of the folks that we've talked to so far, like folks aren't quite ready for that, or looking for that. So I'll just do a quick plug. If you are looking for that and you're interested in using our stack, and have an idea, you have authentication requirements, please reach out. We'd love to chat with you. We're always looking for design partners for these types of things, and this is one of those things where like we're absolutely looking for like a design partner that has those auth needs.
Yeah, awesome. So I have one more question here to bother you with, and then I'll let you continue on where you wanted to go in this code. I think I know the question of this, but you've been deeper in it than me. So the MCP server required, or could you just have ChatGPT make direct GraphQL queries? I believe if you want to do these apps, it is required. This is built on top of MCP. I don't know that there's another way, but maybe there is.
Yeah. So there's sort of two answers to this. So this actual apps SDK thing is completely MCP based. So I guess the answer would be you should do everything over MCP, and certainly to at least deliver your apps, the HTML, React app, whatever, that has to go over MCP. And you probably should also, for the best user experience, deliver the data at the same time with that resource. That being said, technically, I could send direct HTTP requests not over MCP. You could technically do that, but you're
the
sort of
experience is probably not as predictable that way. Maybe I'm not sure.
You're sort of going, you're going around. You're taking the long way around, and kind of escaping out of the protocol. So you could do that. I probably wouldn't recommend it though.
Yeah,
I probably
but you know
would
what?
sort of
Hack
lean
around,
into
see what you find. I'd be curious what y'all end up with. All
Yeah,
right, I'm gonna stop interrupting you for now, Andrew, because I know you've got some more ground to cover here. But I'll pop some more questions to Andrew as we go. So keep them coming. But I'm gonna let you breathe a little bit.
Yeah, sure. The last two things I think I wanted to cover here, as part of this, and then we can maybe go to some more questions, or Amanda kind of move on. So the where was I going to go with this? Oh, yes. So one of the questions you may have, and that comes up with this is, how do I show the right view within my app? So given a certain tool call, how do I make sure the right thing shows up? Because as an example, when I do add to cart, I probably want my cart to show up. And we had looked at this, and we looked at how it was sort of being solved in some of the examples that are out in the wild. And the conclusion that we came to was that there was some, I'm going to say, reinventing of the wheel going on. And in React world, if we were not talking about ChatGPT, how do we show a component based on some criteria? Well, either we do something with state, or very commonly, and this is something we've had for like 15 years, we have routers, right? Like we have React Router that's existed for feels like forever now. And so we said, let's solve the problem the same way. Instead of trying to do weird stuff where we actually have a bunch of different apps for all these different tools and stuff like that, let's just lean into building with React and what people already know. And so if I go into my main app file here, you'll see here that I'm using use navigate from React Router, which again would be very familiar if you've written a React app before. You've probably or something similar, maybe like a TanStack router or something like that. And if you're familiar with use effect, then the second half of this is going to be very familiar. We've got a dependency array, and we've got some kind of function, whatever. Right? Most of us have probably written maybe too many use effects.
I know, I was about to say, is use tool effect going to be a problem now too?
Yeah. So we have this use tool effect here that basically says, similar to use effect, but it says when I've got when this particular tool is executed, when we detect that that's the tool that actually got called, we're going to run this code. And so this allows us to, when our React app is called by ChatGPT, to route to the component that we want to show based on that tool call. And the rest down here, again, if you've done React Router, this is going to look, you're going to go, yeah, I've seen this a million times, or I've just got these routes, and I've just nabbed routes. And I think this one is a really good example where I can say, hey, I've got actually multiple tools that I all want to route to my cart view. and I can just kind of register them all at the same time in the same effect.
Awesome.
Last but not least, this is sort of an important detail I want to call out. I'm not going to go into super detail what's going on behind the scenes, but I do want to point this out that this is our main file. This is where we're just setting up Apollo client. If you've used Apollo client before, this is going to look pretty normal. I'm creating a client. I've got a Apollo provider, nothing crazy there. But the part that is important here is that Apollo client is actually being imported from this Apollo client AI apps library. This is basically an integration library that takes care of a lot of the details in the background and allows you to use Apollo client the way that you're used to using it. And this is very similar to if you've used our other integration libraries, like we have like a Next.js integration library as an example. Works very, very similar, where it's just a plop, a swap where you use this one instead of the normal Apollo client, and it just takes care of everything else in the background for you.
This is very cool. And yeah, like I think the point that you made that really sinks in the most with me is this: none of this looks like unfamiliar. This isn't a big mental model shift to be able to build this and then expose this to ChatGPT as tools over an app.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest, the biggest mental gymnastic here that you have to do is that tool. If you can wrap your mind around this, everything else is just building a React app. I think that's my favorite part of this solution. Our goal was to make this as familiar as possible. And I think anyone who has built a React app with a Apollo client is going to look at this and say, the only thing that's weird here is this app tool. And that's the only thing you have to learn, which I think is exciting, because I think that's a much smaller, thing to learn than to learn how to build apps from scratch all over again.
All right. I really like that. So I think you're kind of coming to the end of your demo here. I'm going to switch back to just our view and pop you some questions. Does that sound good? Tell me if you need your screen again, because I'm hiding it.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right. So the first thing people have been asking is like where to get their hands on some more of this information. So I do want to pop up. There is a template repo of everything that Andrew just showed there. You can run this yourself. Something that I really like in this world. So one thing that I don't think Andrew mentioned, so I do want to call out, to build on the ChatGPT version of this, their developer mode's only available on a paid plan, but there is there is another tool you can use called MCP Jam that's like super nice. I'm a huge fan of it, and it allows you to kind of build in a emulator environment. I'll drop it in the chat.
Can I show that real quick, Amanda?
Oh yeah, actually, go ahead and show, because it's really nice.
Yeah. So let me go back there to show. I just ran basically in that. So this is actually already in that repo, the one we've got the example where you can run this app yourself. If you run npm run commands, npm run dev end to end, which is running for ChatGPT, and then there's just npm run dev. And when you do npm run dev, it'll open up in this MCP Jam. It's sort of like the two ways I think about it. The founder might actually be watching, so I hope I get this right. I talked with them last week, actually on Wednesday. We had a really good time.
Yeah, super nice team. They're really, really helpful, and if you have feedback about their product, they really appreciate it. So
definitely go check them out. Great guys over there. So what happened there is, I just started up with npm run dev, and we've set up the V tooling so that it automatically opens up in the browser, and it has all of your tools. It already is connected to your MCP server, so you don't have to go through any registry steps. You're ready to go as soon as you're npm run dev. And so if I want to do something like, hey, I want to see my top products tool, I can just run that, I get that displayed. Right now, apparently we just ran into an error. That's what happens when you try to demo live.
Oh gosh, if you would have gotten through this whole demo with no errors, I would have been like,
I know.
That's not right.
I know. It wouldn't have been a live demo if something didn't break. So normally, I'll say what normally happens is we get sort of a similar view, just like ChatGPT. We'll have to get that working. But anyways, what's really nice about this, versus ChatGPT is the dev flow for doing against ChatGPT is a little bit of a longer flow, because they have very aggressive caching. You can probably not show my screen anymore, Amanda. And so normally, you'd be making changes, and you have to go hit refresh to get your latest changes. Versus with the MCP Jam tool, it actually supports hot reloading And so you can sort of make these changes to your app and see them immediately appear in MCP Jam. So actually very nice tool for
Yeah,
the
it's a really nice dev experience. So it'll make it easy for you to run this demo if you're not currently paying for your ChatGPT subscription.
that too. Yeah.
I noticed, let me kind of look through the chat here. I did notice somebody mention something about this only being OpenAI ChatGPT, and that's true right now. But there is an open SEP for bringing this to the MCP specification, and OpenAI is actually part of that conversation, along with the guys who founded MCP UI, which you may have heard of as well. So this will expand outside of just ChatGPT, but for now, I believe that is the only like official path for this, as far as I know.
Yeah, so the MCP apps extension to the official MCP specification it's just that right now it's going through the process of being approved. I expect it's probably going to go through pretty quickly because it has Anthropic's involved, OpenAI is involved, like you said, MCP UI folks are involved. So it's going to come through pretty quickly. And our plan, is to support both protocols. And if another protocol comes out, hopefully that one as well, so that you can, to steal a Java-ism a little bit here, I want you folks to be able to write your app one time and deploy it anywhere. And whether they are using, whether they support the OpenAI version of this, or if they support like the MCP version of this, or let's say another vendor, comes out with their version of this, I want you to be able to just write it once and deploy it to any of those places. But yeah, right now it's OpenAI. They were the first ones to the table to say, hey, this is a thing, but this is definitely going to be much wider spread. We've seen stuff like Goose is already in the process of supporting the MCP apps. So you're going to see this, I think, exploding pretty quickly in terms of support from agents.
Yeah, I think that Goose is a good client or agent to take to keep an eye on for this, because they'll definitely be earlier with the support, so you'll be able to try it out there once they support it too. I have a question that I don't know the answer to. I'm not sure if you will, but let's go ahead and show it. How does this relate to the product feed spec and agentic commerce protocol? And I'm not personally familiar with those protocols. Are you?
The product feed spec, I'm not, so I apologize for that. But the e-commerce part, it's very interesting. It's it being in this world. There's always something new, and we know OpenAI for a bit has been playing around with this idea of being able to buy products within ChatGPT, and that was sort of a separate thing before the Apps SDK, but they're starting to glue these together now. So literally, I think as of a couple days ago, they added to their docs some information about being able to do purchases from within ChatGPT. From within one of these apps.
See that. You're right. We're talking monetization now. We're getting to that next phase. App Store, then monetization, then it's
exactly. They're putting down the bricks, right? They're building the foundation. And this is in a private beta right now, so the information about it is somewhat limited, but you can make a safe assumption that they're gluing all of these pieces together. They're going to be using some of the things that they've come up before, and they want to build this whole story of how to get your business in front of your existing customers or potential customers. So we don't support it right now with this, because of the fact that, again, it is brand spanking new. But as soon as we can, it's certainly, for my Jira folks out there, it is on our backlog to sort of explore it and see how we can start integrating that. But again, similar to the question earlier about auth, if you have use cases there, and if especially with the stuff that ChatGPT's already released, and you're interested in being sort of an early design partner when we are able to get to that, please reach out. Would love to hear from you. What having a design,
reach out to you through the GitHub repo, like open issues and things like that.
Man, yeah, probably. So yeah, you can go to that GitHub repo. You can probably reach out there. You can probably find me on LinkedIn pretty easily.
You can find me too if you can't figure it out. I'm very available to you if you need me to get a question to the team, or you're trying to figure out how to get in touch with folks.
Yeah, find Amanda. There's probably lots of ways. Or if you are an Apollo client, obviously go through your customer team.
Yeah.
say something Andrew and Amanda.
Looks like we have just a little bit of confusion about the manifest. So I'm going to pop this question up just in case anybody else does.
Sure.
So just, does the client create a manifest and that manifest is given to initialize an instance of an MCP server with these declared tools resources? So no, that's kind of like backwards from it, because the MCP server is already
yeah.
there.
So
Yeah.
so the application manifest file is generated on the client side. So it's generated by that Vite tooling. And so you would, from a deployment point of view, you would deploy that onto like, wherever you have your MCP server deployed. And the MCP server is able to pick up that. So the manifest itself doesn't result in the MCP server, sort of other way around. The MCP server sees that you have apps, plucks that out, and then generates the resource and tools.
All right. So then here's the $1 million question. When is this launching? Do you know? Are you able to say anything? Or is this like very hush hush right now?
Boy.
I know I put you on the spot here.
I wish I had an answer to this. OpenAI is being very tight-lipped about it, which is not that surprising. They tend to be pretty tight-lipped about.
Yeah, we're kind of blocked by OpenAI needing to release their app store is one thing, and I'm sure there's some more fine tuning that you want to do to what y'all are building as well.
I think the answer is, the best answer I can give is soon, because originally what they said in their blog post was that they were planning on releasing, having this go more open, and have you be able to submit apps in December.
I heard that too. I heard end of year, and I don't believe it right now.
We're sitting December 17th, so unless they're planning on giving us a very strangely timed Christmas present, I'm guessing it's first thing in the new year.
They gave us images instead.
Yeah, maybe they'll surprise us, but to me it would be weird to launch it right before the holidays, because unless they want to launch it to not a lot of fanfare, but like December launches are usually like when you launch stuff that you don't want people to know about. So like I think a January launch would make a lot more sense, but we'll see.
All right. Well, any final thoughts? And before I'm going to wrap up and tell some folks about what we have coming next. Did you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Apologies. I talking to the chat. Yeah, no,
I lost Andrew altogether. All right. I know that we're almost done here because he has turned himself off. All right. Any final thoughts you want to leave folks with? Anything that you're excited about? Anything at all?
Yeah, I will say, I'm excited about really all of this. I'm excited for, folks to go try it out, try out the template, let us know what you think. And yeah, I'm excited for, what's coming next, which is, continuing to kind of get feature parity that we need for the entire Apps SDK, and also looking at, fully supporting the MCP apps spec as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm so glad that you were here today. I learned a lot. And I hope everybody in the chat did. Thank you to everybody in the chat. You were super lively. Love to see all those questions. There's clearly a lot of excitement about this. I know I'm excited. So anything you build over there, share stuff with us. I'd love to see what you're building. Interact with the repo, test it out. If you have ideas, feedback, definitely get in touch with us. Comment on that repo, open up any kind of issues that you see. We'd love to see them. This is our last MCP server builder community event of the year, but we do have something already planned for January after the new year. We're going to host a panel on the MCC. Ooh, I say end of the hour for me too. MCP 2026 forecast, and we have some great panelists there. I would love to see all of you there, bringing all your questions. What do you want in the spec this year? What do you think is still a big friction in MCP? What are you building? And everybody's predictions, spicy and realistic for 2026. So definitely join us after the new year. And thank you all again for spending time with us. Really, really appreciate it. And we'll catch you next.